Yo, what's up, guys? This is Justin from Extreme Health Radio. We had a really great, interesting video interview, our first video interview today with Haley Love, talking about her struggle and her overcoming rheumatoid arthritis and fibromyalgia, which is incredibly dangerous diseases and can just wreak havoc on your life if you let them go unchecked. So we talked about what she did, the protocol she did with her diet, specific cleansing strategies that she did every single day and every month, the emotional spiritual connection, and a lot of the emotional spiritual things that she did to give her the will and the character to overcome these two particular diseases and naturally. And so really fascinating interview with Haley Love. So I hope you enjoy it. Also, all of our shows are free. So this particular episode is sponsored by the Relax Far Infrared Sauna, which is an amazing tool for healing on every level, and we use ours every single day. It helps to detoxify your organs, detoxify your body of chemicals and poisons that get stored in the fat cells, helps to increase heat shock proteins, which boosts your immune system. It's the most incredible longevity tool, and it's just an amazing thing, and you can learn more about that if you're interested in the Relax Far Infrared Sauna at extremehealthradio.com/sauna. So anyway, enjoy this interview with Haley Love and share it with your friends. I really appreciate that. Okay, so today we're here with Haley Love, and this is Justin from Extreme Health Radio, and I wanted to talk with Haley about her journey with healing arthritis. So Haley, you had written an article for our website a while back, and you sort of chronicled your rheumatoid arthritis journey, fibromyalgia, and I wanted to talk with you a little bit about some of the different things that you did in order to heal and what led up to the diagnosis and that kind of thing.
Well, I had struggled for many years with joint pain and a variety of symptoms. Had been diagnosed with fibromyalgia years before and didn't really believe that that was true. I did a lot of healing diets off and on, but had difficulty sticking to the diets. So there was definitely some emotional eating and food addiction that was part of my journey, and honestly continues to be ongoing. And so then what happened was I went to the doctor, had a physical, and was complaining about my symptoms. He sent me to a rheumatologist, and that's when I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. So that was in June of 2013.
June of 2013. And are there different forms of rheumatoid arthritis, or are all the same? Because I have a friend now who's dealing with it and is having a really difficult time with rheumatoid arthritis. That's one of the reasons why I was so interested to talk with you. Are there different forms of rheumatoid arthritis?
Not that I'm aware of. I know there are different forms of autoimmune arthritis. As far as I know, rheumatoid is considered its own specific thing.
And so how bad were the symptoms that you were experiencing? Because you said you went to the doctor, and were they very debilitating?
Yes, they were, and it was getting worse. It started with just wrist pain, and by the time I saw the rheumatologist, it was every joint in my body, from my toes to my jaw to my neck, knees, ankles, hips. I was having a difficult time even going for a walk. I could make it about a block before I was done and wanted to go home. I was off work for about 5 months, and emotionally really struggling as well. I was quite depressed, and I was terrified because I was told that I needed to start taking medication right away before any of my joints started deforming. Of course, that's a pretty scary thing to be facing, and I wasn't very keen on Western medicine and medication. So there was a a real challenge for me because I had my family as well as my doctor telling me that I must start taking medication. And I went through a time of having a difficult time trusting myself and, um, you know, deciding what path to take.
So did you end up taking any of the medication at all?
No, I didn't. Initially, I was only prescribed Plaquenil. Um, and that was because, now I know normally they would also prescribe methotrexate or some other drugs like that. In my case, the reason I was diagnosed was because of something called, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget, anti-CCP, which is anti-cyclic citrullonated antibody testing. So that is thought to be, it's a newer diagnostic test that's thought to be very specific. And but I had no indication of inflammation. But I was on an extremely anti-inflammatory diet already, and I knew that I could go home that evening and eat some foods and come back the next day with inflammation, but
Really?
of course wasn't going to do that. And I remember my family doctor at the time telling me that there can only be one captain of the ship and that I needed to listen to the professionals.
Oh my goodness. So when you were told that you needed to do that, all of your friends and family were encouraging you to take the medication?
Not all of them, but some of them definitely were. And, my parents were feeling frightened and wanting, of course, wanting me to feel better. But it just didn't feel right to me. And, there was a lot of synchronicities that came into play in terms of my decision. I started seeing a colon hydrotherapist, and she at one time also had rheumatoid arthritis and was able to overcome it.
Okay.
She put me in touch with this really interesting woman who is elderly. I believe she's in her 80s, and we had a phone conversation where she asked me if I knew how to muscle test my body and how to talk to my body, and really reminded me of just trusting myself. And so it felt to me like she was an angel sent to me, a messenger sent to me to tell me to trust myself. And then I imagine you're familiar with Louise Hay.
Yeah, very much familiar with her.
Yeah, so I looked up rheumatoid arthritis in Louise Hay, and I remember the affirmation being, I am my own authority. And that was a really powerful thing for me, because I had authority figures, parents, people challenging me, and then I was doubting myself. And so that became my affirmation, that I was my own authority, and continue with what I was already doing. And I, of course, did lots of research and added quite a few things to what I was doing.
Yeah, in the article that you wrote for us, you talked a lot about that. And I want to get into some of the stuff you were doing, but what is it about the affirmations you think that Louise Hay has about the I am my own authority? Because I have it's interesting you say that, because in our culture, we have all these perceived authority figures in our life. Now they're calling the firemen, they're calling them, here at least, they're calling them the fire authority. And it's interesting because I think we give away a lot of our authority and our ability to step into who we really are by the use of language. And I don't know what, it's our culture is just so strange like that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. The affirmations became a really important part of my healing journey. I was also using hot yoga as a way to help myself. And what I would do is I would go to hot yoga, and initially I could hardly do it. I honestly would lie on the floor half the class and just breathe.
Wow.
And Yeah, and I used affirmations during my yoga practice. So I used to say things to myself like, I'm a warrior goddess, and I'm a healing machine, and repeat that to myself. And that really started to integrate into my mind and keep me going.
Wow. And so, are there any other emotional ties to rheumatoid arthritis? I'm trying to think of. Kate and I were just talking about this the other day. Um, if there's any other affirmations, does Louise Hay talk about other emotional issues in terms of rheumatoid arthritis?
Not that I recall. That one affirmation was just so powerful for me that's what I worked with. I do think though that we're also all unique, and if that is not this specific emotional issue for you, it could be something else. And I think not getting too caught up in the black and white of some of those things is important too.
Right. Wow. So you had people, some people reporting you not taking the medication. Then the doctor, what was it he said again, that he needed to be the authority? You needed to have one person in charge, and he needed to be the person?
That there can only be one captain of the ship, and that I needed to surrender.
Wow. So he really said that to you. So what did you say to him back?
I don't remember. I was just kind of shocked, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
And that was my family doctor who said that to me. And I did go back to the rheumatologist after I saw, there was a different doctor that I went to see who is a medical doctor, but goes totally against mainstream treatment. And I went to see him about 2 months after the diagnosis, already undiagnosable. And that was only 2 months after the initial diagnosis, although it was 6 months after the blood work for which the diagnosis came from. And I went to see him, and at that time I asked him, so how is the rheumatoid arthritis? And he just said, well, I don't know. What do you mean? and at that time, the antibody that I had tested in a moderate range for was now less than 8. And I guess if it's less than 8, they don't even report on it.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's incredible. So this was how long after? This was about 6 months after the initial diagnosis?
It was 6 months after the blood work that the diagnosis came from. But, I still didn't find out until 4 months after that blood work was done. So then I did go back to see the rheumatologist, and I told her what happened, and it was so out of her realm of reality that she just said, oh, well, it must have been a misdiagnosis, and you just have fibromyalgia.
I'm sorry, you cut out.
I said to her,
there.
Anymore either.
What was the last thing you said? You cut out right at the end there.
Oh, I told her that I wasn't having a lot of fibromyalgia symptoms anymore either, and she didn't really engage with me at all.
Isn't that, it's so bizarre. It's so crazy and outside of my understanding of what could be going on in their head, because you think of someone, I mean, there's stories all the time of people who overcome, catastrophic diseases, cancer and things. And it's just bizarre to me that doctors don't want to hear when you don't use their protocols, but you overcome something. It's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so weird. So she just basically said, I don't want to hear about what's going on, and I'm glad you're feeling better, and just keep doing what you're doing, kind of thing.
Pretty much, yeah. And so I really won't go back.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. So you were doing the affirmations, you were doing the yoga, and you were already eating, you said, a pretty anti-inflammatory diet, you said?
Yeah, I was already on the GAPS diet, which stands for Gut and Psychology Syndrome. I know you're familiar with that. It's Natasha Campbell McBride had put that together. And, there was just so many synchronicities in my entire experience, because years before this even happened, I took a cooking class with a friend who was a GAPS practitioner.
Really?
And I had no idea at the time how much I would need that information one day, and how valuable it would be. So before the diagnosis, I obviously knew something was wrong, because I was just so exhausted and in so much pain. And so I was already trying to take matters into my own hands, and had been doing a lot of bone broth and making my own homemade fermented sauerkraut and all of that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I was already starting to feel better by the time I was diagnosed.
Isn't that bizarre? So you sort of somehow subconsciously knew something was wrong. That's probably why that person came into your life, the cook with the GAPS diet, before you were even diagnosed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. And so how long ago before you were diagnosed was that again?
Sorry, what's that?
How long ago before you were diagnosed was that introduction to the GAPS diet?
It was a couple of years beforehand, maybe 2 years before. And I was interested in health and healing, and cooking and learning to make different foods anyway. I had struggled with some of my symptoms from a very early age, from my early 20s. And so I had done candida diets off and on since that time. And so I was already somewhat into that, but not nearly as strict as I eventually became with.
I'm sorry. I think you cut out right there. That's it looks. I kind of missed the last couple sentences you said there.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. Yeah, it kind of just cuts out a little bit.
Yeah, the connection's a little bit slow or something.
Yeah. So what were you saying? The last couple sentences, you were saying that you had done a candida diet and all kinds of cleansing sort of diets way before this.
Yeah, I had started that back in my early 20s, because even at that time I was struggling with some of these things, in terms of some pain, and at that time I thought it was all related to candida, and I did have challenges with that. So I off and on had done cleansing healing diets over the years anyway.
Uh-huh.
And then when I implemented the GAPS diet, it just became more strict, with no grains, and following the step-by-step protocol with all the different stages of the GAP diet.
So how long did you do the GAPS diet? And did you do it 100%? Because I think there's different levels, right? People can kind of ease into it. And did you do it 100% for a long time?
Oh, now you've cut out a little bit.
Oh, sorry about that. Did you ease into the GAPS diet, or did you do it 100%? And then did you do that for a long period of time?
I eased into it. It took me some time to motivate myself and to figure out where I was going to find bones and everything that I needed to implement it, and also trying to discover what I could make that I still enjoyed. So I eased into it because it's pretty daunting. It's a big task. And I was on it really strictly for about a year, at which point I had some celebration evenings of, drinking and eating what I wanted to, and that was great. It was exciting that I was able to do that, and yet at the same time, what I've experienced over the last few years is that I'll eat really clean for a little while and then go on vacation or something like that, indulge a bit, and then I do see some minor flare-ups when I do that.
Hmm.
So I
So to
think,
clear up a little bit, do you think that you've removed, is it an infection that's causing that, or what's causing the symptoms that get displayed as rheumatoid arthritis? Do we know that?
I don't know for sure. In a lot of the research I did, parasitic or amoeba-like infections are thought to be often responsible for arthritis. And I did have some testing done that showed I positive for an unknown parasite, and I did colon hydrotherapy once a week for 2 years.
Wow, during the time that you had the diagnosis.
Yes, I actually had started this a few months prior, so I was already doing that. And then when I was diagnosed, I decided to continue with it until I felt better. And I saw crazy amounts of parasites coming out of me, and I believe, unfortunately, that they're not completely cleared. I am still doing coffee enemas every day, and I still see some come out. So I think that my microbiome is still not perfect in terms of what it could be. So it's an ongoing maintenance.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, it's a friend of ours, friend of Kate's and mine, who's dealing with rheumatoid arthritis right now. You know, she's dealt with people, and they'll say, or she'll talk to people that say, you know, they just simply gave up things like, what are some of the inflammatory foods, like the red bell peppers, and there's certain classifications of foods that are really, really inflammatory. And she'll speak with people who have done that, and she'll tell us that she's done ozone, oxygen therapy, and all kinds of different protocols similar to you, but hers seems to be holding on for it's she's still got it. And it's interesting to me that some people can heal with something as little as just removing certain nightshade vegetables out of their diet, and some people have to go to a really, really strong protocol like you did. You did GAPS for 2 years. You did 1 year doing coffee enemas and colonics, and it's just amazing what people have to go through in order to clear this out of their bodies.
Absolutely. And, to be honest, I still do a coffee enema every morning, and the colon hydrotherapy I've reduced to once a month at this point.
Okay.
And yeah, it's just incredible. I also suspect that this may have started from a very young age, especially with the amount of parasites I've seen. Even after almost a few years of doing this, I saw 3 come out in a row that were honestly the size of my arm.
Oh my goodness! Wow, that's bizarre.
Yeah.
Were you given any antibiotics? What do you think were some of the things that could have led up to this at a young age?
Absolutely. A lot of antibiotics as a child. I had a lot of ear infections. I was, even as a baby, my mom recalls that I struggled with constipation. And so over the years, I took a lot of antibiotics. I was on tetracycline for years as a teenager for acne, which was one of my symptoms. So all of that just over time created a very imbalanced gut flora.
And there must be some sort of connection too to stress, right? I would think.
Oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some sort of connection where maybe some of the energetic stuff that happens, like stress or these, the negative versions of the affirmations, the subconscious programming, maybe they hold the infections inside our bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's true. I also think that a lot of our our positive biochemicals are made in the gut, so our serotonin, etc. And if you don't have gut health, it's very difficult to have emotional health and mental health. And I remember I really struggled significantly with depression and anxiety throughout most of my life, and thought that that was just the way I was, and didn't understand that those things could heal as well. And I remember knowing that my negative thoughts were not necessarily a reflection of my life, but it's like I could not seem to snap my mind out of it. And I think it's really challenging to do that when you don't have the neurotransmitters that your brain needs to feel good.
So you were saying that the negative thinking and the negative thought patterns was something that was sort of maybe a subconscious default level way of thinking for a lot of years.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting. And so it said on the article that you shared with us too that you had taken a low dose naltrexone. And can you explain what that is to people?
Yeah. So naltrexone, it's a drug that's been on the market since the 70s, I believe, and at a high dose is used to treat alcoholism and heroin addiction. And it does that by blocking the opiates. And it was discovered that if you use a very low dose, somewhere between 3 and 4.5 milligrams, that what happens is it shuts down the opiates for a couple of hours, and then your body thinks it doesn't have enough and goes into overproduction. So it's thought to increase your body's production of endorphins by 700% or up to that, and has some other effects on other immune cells. I don't recall the details exactly. So I started researching the low-dose naltrexone. It's used in cancer treatment, cancer prevention. It's used to treat MS, many other issues. So I had asked the alternative doctor that I went to finish my sentence. He had written me a year-long prescription for it. And so it's something that takes up to a year to reach its full impact, because it's the body's own healing mechanism that's being tapped into. And what I found, a few months after taking it, my pain levels reduced a lot. And so I've been taking it for about 2 years now, and one of the most amazing things I've noticed is that I just don't really get colds anymore, or flus. And if I do, it's, a 1, where it used to be an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 in severity. So definitely my immune system has been strengthened by it.
Wow. And so you're still taking that?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
No dose. And it's called low dose naltrexone.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so it says also in the article that you wrote, the coffee enemas was been one of your biggest things, and also this idea of a healing circle. And tell us a little bit about that, because I thought that was a really interesting part of the article.
Yeah, well, I'll start with the coffee enemas. As I was researching online, looking for different alternative therapies to help me, that came up, and I was a little squeamish about trying it. But once I did, I couldn't believe how much better I felt. It was amazing in terms of reducing my pain, my headaches. It helped with my emotional state significantly, my mental clarity, and honestly just gave me the energy and the will to continue. It's also fantastic for reducing die-off when you're going through a cleanse. So that's been extremely helpful.
So you use the coffee enemas once a day. You said in the mornings?
Yeah, once a day in the mornings. I have done them 2 or 3 times a day when I've been feeling really sick, but really don't have time for that now.
Yeah. So they take about, how long do they take to do one at one? Because I was doing them there for a while, for about 6 or 8 months straight. But I forget, I think they take about a half hour each. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Yeah. And once you get the hang of it, they're pretty easy to do, aren't they?
Oh yeah, it's really easy.
Yeah.
I actually, this is kind of funny. I forgot that I had done one morning, and I was on my way to get my hair cut, and decided I was going to ride my bike that day. So I rode my bike to get my hair cut, and didn't realize until I arrived that I had not released the coffee in my head, and suddenly made a very quick bolt to the bathroom. So it becomes very easy when you're used to it.
Yeah, yeah. And so do you cycle on? I think they say I was doing, I think 824, I think I was doing 24 ounces. I forget exactly what I was doing, but I would do for myself like three rounds that would equal 24 ounces, 8 ounces at a time. Do you do that kind of thing, or how's your procedure for that?
It kind of depends how clear things are in there. If I how that works. Sometimes I'll do a small one, release it, and then put more in and then retain it, because it can be challenging to retain if you have any amount of gas or any extra. So that's what I usually do.
Could you repeat what you just said again there? It just sort of cut out again. The connection went bad.
No problem. I just said I usually do a small amount first and release it, and then I put the rest in and retain it, because otherwise it can be really difficult to hold.
So you did those, or you still do them every morning? Do you do them before you eat breakfast or before you have a bowel movement in the morning?
I try to do it after having a bowel movement, and usually I have breakfast afterwards.
Okay. So I feel like that's been really helpful to you.
Oh yeah.
So the coffee enemas in the morning, and then that the healing circle that you mentioned, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. I felt the need to be witnessed and heard, and I wanted to draw in the power of the collective to help me create the outcome I wanted. So I invited some friends together, and one of whom is wonderful at facilitating workshops, shaman-like abilities. And so she facilitated that, and I just shared my story and my struggle and my fears, and everyone who attended the circle then just spoke their wishes for me and joined me in collectively visualizing myself well and healthy and happy. And I had saved journals that I had been writing since I was probably 13 years old. That had a lot of my angst and depression and things that I had tried to work through, but there was a lot of negativity in that writing as well, and I felt that it was important for me to let that go. So after we had the circle, we then went outside and had a huge bonfire, and I burned all of it.
Wow, isn't that fascinating? I have doctors that comes on the show every now and then. Dr. Richard Massey talks a lot about writing letters to yourself and to your subconscious mind or to your past. Or I know John Sarno, Dr. John Sarno, does a lot of work in New York with healing back pain, and he does the same sort of thing, and almost creates like a ritual, or turns it into a ceremonial type thing. And it does seem to release something, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a very powerful activity for me. And I remember watching it all go up in smoke and feeling like a new beginning could start from that point.
Wow, how powerful! Because you're almost like, you know, realizing the invisible, whatever the invisible force was that was holding and locking that infection in your body. You're seeing it, you know, burn and vanish from existence, and it's kind of would seem like it would be really powerful to see that, to write all that stuff out, and then to see it just burn and float away like that.
Yeah, it was very powerful. I
Wow.
also, another thing that really helped with my mental, emotional state and motivation was I tried to seek out any stories I could of people that had overcome this disease or that were at least doing really well. And I found 2 yoga champions who also had struggled with the disease and overcome it. There's one guy, I don't know if you've heard of him, his name is Joseph Insinia, and he's a Bikram yoga 3-time national champion. And he's got lots of videos online, and he can do some of the most amazing athletic things that any human body could possibly do.
How do you spell his last name?
Encinia.
Okay, I'm going to search him out.
And there's also a female named Rowena Jane. And she's also a yoga champion and a naturopathic doctor who has a similar story. So I thought, you know, if they can do that, then I can do it too. And
did you read any books as well? And you did a lot of research and trying to find all kinds of stuff that would help you.
No, I didn't. Most of the research I did was all online. I also listened to your show. I listened to as much, you know, lots of podcasts and different information that I could find.
Yeah, because surrounding yourself with people that are going to be on your team and sort of creating that. I think Chris Carr calls it like you know, she's the CEO of her health, and she has her own health team that she surrounds herself with, and not letting people in that are very negative or very, you know, have a negative aspect, or maybe they try to bring you down and try to convince you to take the medication, and preventing people like that during a time of such a healing crisis, I would think would be really, really important.
Absolutely. And for me, just declaring and claiming my own power and stating that I am my own decision maker, I am my own authority, was absolutely key.
So when you started doing the affirmation, as such, did you start noticing after a certain amount of time that you started to step into your own power, started to become your own authority more in your life?
Absolutely. I still went through bouts of self-doubt as I was, you know, getting to the point of integrating that and really believing it. But there did come a point where I didn't just think, but I knew that I would heal.
Really? So it became something that was just, it was a deep knowing inside your body that you knew, you just didn't know when, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and with that, I mean, you know, like I said, I do need to maintain my diet to be symptom-free, and I'm still pursuing how optimal I can feel. One of the things I've discovered in this process is that a lot of things have gone away that I didn't even realize were symptoms, because it's just how it always was for me. For example, I had a lot of hair breakage and fallout, and so I've noticed those things change and I never would have identified them as part of the problem. So now my experiment is how well can I actually feel?
I know that's the cool thing, right? That's the fun journey is once you get over all these little knick-knack for a lot of people, knick-knack injuries or knick-knack health issues. But when you start to, clear the plate of those things, it starts to become a lot of fun trying to determine how much energy can I have? How much can I be passionate and excited about life? And where can I go? And how healthy can I be?
Yeah, and I want to pursue athletic performance, and there's so many things that I want to do. I'm excited about this in terms of anti-aging. I've noticed at times when I've binged and eaten poor foods that the next day I can actually see my eyelids drooping. And then when I get back on my healthy regime, within a few days, I actually see my skin tighten up a little bit.
Wow.
So it's amazing what we can do with food, with our mind, with exercise. And yeah, it's exciting to see where it can go.
Yeah, and the other thing you mentioned in your article too was the ultraviolet blood irradiation as well as acupuncture and things like that.
Yeah.
Those helped a lot.
Oh yeah, the ultraviolet blood irradiation. I've had that done, I believe, 4 times now, and it just kick-started my feeling better, probably faster than anything else. Are you familiar with what they do?
Somewhat, but yeah, let's dive into that a little bit because maybe some of our listeners aren't familiar with that.
Okay. Well, it starts with taking quite a bit of blood, like about a quart of blood out of the body. And it is then, where I go, they put O3 into your blood and put it through an ultraviolet light machine. And then it's slowly dripped back into your body. My basic understanding is that it helps to oxygenate your cells, and also it will kill viruses, bacteria, etc. that's in your body. And then when those dead cells or viruses and bacteria go into your body, your immune system knows what to do and knows who to kill and is able to do its job better.
That's fascinating. So you said you've had that about 4 times?
Yeah.
4 times. And how long does it take each time?
It takes about 2 hours.
Okay.
And for me, afterwards, I need to go home and sleep for about 15 hours because it just, your body goes into major healing mode. And I remember after the first time I had it done, it was pretty exciting because I had not been able to eat fruit for at least 6 months at that point. And after having it done, I felt so much better. I thought I could experiment a little, and I still remember that first peach was like candy.
That's cool.
And didn't have a flare-up as a result. So
wow, that's fascinating. So you flare up if you ate any kind of fruit?
yeah, I was very sensitive to anything sweet, anything even with natural sugar. And even now I go through periods where I'll stop eating fruit for, even a month or so, and then add it back in, but not overboard.
Wow, it's interesting how sensitive you can be, to certain foods, and that's amazing. So, what other foods can you not eat right now?
I find grains to be probably the biggest issue. I've tested it out where I'll just try some rice or something, and usually what will happen is I'll be constipated for 3 days. I'll get a little bit of joint pain. I might get a little bit of acne or something, some brain fog. So grains at this point are just a no-no.
Yeah, yeah. I can't do any grains at all these days. I can't. I stopped eating breads and grains back in 2003. Haven't really missed them, since. But yeah, I just can't digest that stuff. I just can't. I don't do well with it. It knocks me down. It feels like a brick in my stomach. I don't think we're meant to eat grains.
My body agrees with you.
Yeah. So what are some of the other foods? Like, I know they talk a lot about the nightshade vegetables. Do those affect you pretty adversely?
Not really, no.
Really? Because they say things like bell peppers and root vegetables or nightshade vegetables are really, really inflammatory. But you seem to be doing okay with those.
I seem to be okay with them, except for potatoes, which are a bit too starchy, I think.
Okay.
One of the things I also had done was I had food allergy testing done. So I was able to see specifically what I was reacting to. And there was a few things I was really surprised by.
Really? Like what?
I was allergic to garlic. And I believe now that it was because I was eating excessive amounts of garlic, and with leaky gut, I think it was leaking out into my system, and my body was confused by that. So what I've found is rotating foods has been really important.
And did you do like a food elimination kind of thing to find out some of those foods you're allergic to as well?
Well, the GAPS diet in many ways becomes that, because in the very beginning, all I was having was bone broth, cooked vegetables that are low in fiber, and organic meats, boiled only, and sauerkraut juice. So there's not a whole lot that you're having at that point.
Yeah, I've heard it's really challenging to go through that the GAPS, especially when you're first starting out. I hear it's really challenging.
It's really challenging, absolutely. But at the same time, when you start to see how much better you feel, and for me, I'm stubborn, so I didn't want to give up foods, and I would, be really good for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I would think I can just have this one thing, and I would see how terrible it made me feel. So that in itself became motivating.
Yeah, noticing how food affects your body and how
because when you're eating those foods, you don't really realize.
Yeah, you don't feel it, right? Most people don't feel it.
Yeah, and I didn't feel it either when I was eating those things all the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. You said that about garlic. I wonder if there's any of the methyl, because a lot of people have a problem methylating the sulfur that's in the garlic. I wonder if that was part of your issue as well.
Possibly.
Interesting. And so, what are some of the two of the biggest things? I guess you can combine or divide part of what you were doing with the physical stuff you were doing, like the yoga, the meditation. I'm sorry, the yoga and the diet and the eating and things like that. And then the energetic stuff and the more spiritual, emotional stuff. Of those two camps, what do you think were the two that were the most beneficial for you?
That's a hard question. I think they were both equally important.
So do you think that if you had gone through this and you hadn't had the emotional, spiritual piece, you think your progress would have been delayed or not effective?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Especially because I remember initially when I got the diagnosis, I felt worse just because I had this idea in my head that I'm sick now and I have this problem. I have rheumatoid arthritis, and I almost started identifying with it or taking it on as, you know, this is now my reality. And when I was in that state of mind, my pain was worse, my fatigue was worse, all of my symptoms were worse. And I was, you know, not in an empowered kind of mindset. So it took time to shift that, and without having a sense of a reason for healing, without having kind of claimed my power back and deciding that I was the authority and that I was going to trust myself, I would have never had the will to, you know, go looking for chicken backs and necks to make my bone broth.
I know you're working all day long, and then you go after work to go get chicken, you know, bone broth and bones and all that kind of stuff, and doing coffee enemas in the morning and colon hydrotherapy sessions once a week. I mean, it's such a huge and monstrous task. And I think that if you don't have, like what you're saying, the spiritual, emotional side to it, to go along with it, I mean, you're not going to have that sort of motivation and that drive and the deeper reason as to trying to get to the bottom of why you have it. And I mean, if you don't have all that stuff, you know, at the base foundation, it's, I would imagine, very challenging to continue with the dietary changes and things.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was key.
And you know what's interesting too is I noticed it too that a lot of people, when they get the diagnosis of the rheumatoid arthritis, they'll say my RA, and they'll abbreviate it, give it a little nickname, and like you said, they'll identify with it, which is I think probably part of the problem, right? Because once you get that diagnosis, you think that that's you, or you think that now I have this, and you lose the connection of your soul and that you're not a body, and you start lumping them all together and thinking that it's you.
Absolutely. I also think that there's often a bigger picture involved in terms when we get sick with something, in terms of how it can tie into your purpose or your reason for being here. And for me, I work as a social worker, and I used to work with families that had sick or disabled children, and I now work in adoptions. But every day I hear about children with ADHD, mental health problems, autism, all of these different things that I have now come to believe are very connected to gut health. And you know, it's put me on a path now of wanting to study this more and help others. And I think that there's a bigger picture to this that is beyond our individual journey and struggle, if we're open to it.
What do you think for you was the biggest lesson in going through this? What do you think that it was? Because I'm reading a book right now called Sacred Contracts. I'm not sure if you've heard that by or read that by Carolyn Mace. And she talks about how we come into this life with these contracts, and you know, every single little nuance that we have in our life is something that we set up before we come here in order to go through, so that we can sort of blossom and become the type of person we need to be in our full power. Interesting ideas. I don't know if it's true. It seems to be true. And so if you take that line of reasoning, have you thought about what sort of reason you would have this challenge for a while?
Well, I definitely think that it's part of my contract for being here in this world. And I feel that if I hadn't been through this, that I would not understand and be able to help others. Already at this point, I have people that call me up or you know, refer a friend to talk to me that's going through something similar. And I openly chat with them about my experience. But I now want to, at some point, further my education so that I can formally work with people that have some of these kinds of challenges and want an alternative way of going through it. So I really totally believe that it's all synchronistically, perfectly set up.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, who you become in the process was probably someone that is radically different than who you are today. You know, who you became going through that. Had you not had to go through that, I'm sure you would have been a completely different person.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing, the amount of growth that can occur by going through something where it takes so much discipline and so much intestinal fortitude and so much research and learning and growth. Um, it's just an amazing thing, because it's interesting how some people will get a diagnosis like that and they will take the advice of their family members and their friends and go down the medical path, which is, if that's what's, you know, they're doing, that's good for them if that's what they want to do. But it's interesting that, you know, you could also go another way and become someone incredibly powerful in the process and learn all these kinds of amazing lessons by going through it. And sometimes it takes longer than you would if you went down the medical path, because the medical path can give people, you know, quick fixes to things because they just can cover up symptoms so quick and so easily.
Yeah.
And then your friends and family might be thinking, gosh, you're crazy. You've been doing this for 3 years or 2 years and you haven't, you know, completely cured it yet. What's wrong? You know, you should just take the medication. But going through that process, you become someone completely different.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's very character building, and, you know, also at times difficult. There's definitely ups and downs that have been part of it. But, you know, a huge thing has been just continually renewing a sense of commitment. And I've had to train quite a few times.
I'm sorry, what did you say right there? You cut out a little bit. Renewing a sense of commitment?
Yeah, a sense of commitment. So, you know, when you decide to take on a chronic illness like this, and through diet, nutrition, emotional healing, etc., it's a lot to commit to. And so I had to continually remind myself about why am I doing this, and having important enough whys, I think, is important as well. One of those for me is that I still hope to have children, and I knew that if I was to take those kind of medications, that having a child would more than likely not be an option for me. And so, you know, I think that if a person is going through something like this, finding that why, finding a really important why to help you keep that commitment, that helped me a lot as well.
Yeah, I could imagine that. And also too, it seems like stories in your head that will serve you in such beautiful ways. Because what if you have a child and that child grows up to be, you know, some world leader, some changer, some incredible, amazing person that affects this a massive amount of change in culture and society. And had you gone down the traditional path and taken the medications, you wouldn't have been able to have this child. And you know, so you can create kind of really powerful whys if you just sort of kind of get creative with the stories you tell yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and the other thing about not choosing the medical route is that, from what I observed, it doesn't work very well anyway. I have an aunt who is diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and she's gone down the path of taking medication. And she has still required joint surgeries, and I think she's on about, you know, $5,000 worth of medication every month, and someone has to come to her house and give her injections, and you know, I was looking at that thinking, well, her quality of life is not great. And that is not what I want. So, you know, when you're looking at weighing out those options, sure, one might help to reduce your symptoms initially. But the long-term outcomes are not great anyway.
Yeah, and weighing all that out is really important thing to do, you know, weighing that all that out and looking and seeing what kind of life you want to lead and where it's going to go. It's important to think about all these things, you know, and you know, have you had any experience with people or talk with people that have had the deformation that occurs within the joints? You know, I hear that when people, it gets to that point where their joints are being deformed, is that has someone gone too far, and can they come back from that, do you think?
Well, my colon hydrotherapist could speak to that, because she also had a very similar experience to myself, and she has a knuckle to this day that shows the deformity had started. And she was told, you know, you're going to be in a wheelchair, and, you know, you must take these medications. But she was also much more into using natural methods, and she went on her own journey, and that was as much deformity as she experienced. It stopped, and she's had no further issues with it.
Wow, isn't that fascinating? So it kind of just stopped. It hasn't continued to grow or spread to other joints.
No, but again, she's really strict with food and cleansing and healing as well.
Wow, that's interesting. Have you done the hyperbaric oxygen chambers and all that?
No, I haven't. I looked into it, and they actually do it at the hospital here in Edmonton, and you can pay for it yourself. But it was just not me from a financial perspective, so I did not do it.
Interesting. I've heard people also using, have you heard of those chambers called the cryogenic chambers, where it lowers the body temperature, or I'm sorry, it lowers the outside temperature. Like you step into this kind of contraption and it lowers the temperature. So it's similar to sitting in a bucket of ice, and it brings all the blood down into your internal organs so that it, you know, protects your internal organs first. And then once you get out, the blood then rushes with a ton of stem cells in the blood from going into your internal organs, and then it rushes out to your joints and send those stem cells, you know, to your joints and to your muscles. And a lot of athletes are doing this, but I imagine that something like that could be very helpful for people with rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah, it sure sounds like it. It's not something I'm familiar with.
Yeah, really, really interesting. So what do you want to tell people? I'm sure that you sometimes you just want to shake people, right? And just say you know, certain things. What throughout your whole experience, what would you like to say to people that are newly diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis or fibromyalgia or any kind of disease where you feel like they have some options?
Trust yourself. Don't give up. And if you come across roadblocks, know that we're all unique as well. You don't necessarily want to follow the exact path that somebody else has taken. One of the things that I discovered, for example, I always thought that I had a candida overgrowth, and through testing found out that it was actually Saccharomyces overgrowth, which is normally thought to be beneficial. And I'd been taking Saccharomyces as a probiotic, and then realized it worked. So I've had to individualize my treatment, essentially. There was even a time that I had to stop using fermented vegetables. And that was because I had something called elevated D-lactate, which essentially means that your body is fermenting carbohydrates so quickly that even beneficial organisms like Acidophilus can overgrow and extremely acidic. So, so there's been a lot of individualized tweaking that I've had to do to figure out what exactly is right for me. So I would really encourage people to listen to their body, listen to themselves, and if you have a family member or a friend that is strongly challenging you on what you choose to do, you know, don't let them be part of your process.
Yeah, protect yourself, right? I mean, it's almost like I think that is so important and so key for people, because so many people are, or a lot of people are very close-minded, and they're very afraid, and you know, and they want to weigh in on someone, whether it's a family member, a daughter, sister, brother that has a diagnosis. They want to all of a sudden tell them what they should do, and it becomes this whole psychological trap, that an emotional trap that people can get involved with, and that could be its own stressor itself, you know, and input from other people.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, what a lesson. My goodness. So you're feeling good these days? You're feeling pretty good?
Yeah, I'm feeling really good. Working
Doing your
full
yoga?
time. Pardon?
Doing your yoga?
Yeah, I'm working full time. I'm doing my yoga. I'm continuing with my healthy eating because my body shows me that that is necessary to continue. I have an old injury from an ankle sprain that I'm working through now, and so I'm just working on getting my body 100%, so that I'd like to start some more strength training, and yeah, just I've been feeling great. My energy's great. State is really positive. I feel good every day. I wake up feeling happy, which is awesome. I sleep well, and you know, I know it'll be a continued journey throughout life, and I feel blessed that I, you know, came across this at a young enough age to age more gracefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another big thing too, is having the will to live, because I think that what happens, and a lot of people, you know, they get older and they just sort of lose the will and the desire to push through. But when you have so many factors like you do, you know, living life, being happy, having children, doing all these things, you really do have a lot of will. And so
Mhm.
I think that's really cool to have that, and to fight for something, you know?
Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Do you have a website or anything, or people can contact you?
Um, Unfortunately, I don't. I I am working on a book about my experience because I would like to share with the world, and give a lot more detail too about everything from, you know, all the supplements I used, and that kind of stuff. So it's in process right now.
Nice.
But if anyone does want to reach me, ask me a question, email would be fine. And my email is haleyonelove, HALEYONELOVE @gmail.com. And if anyone wants to contact me, then I'm open to that.
That is so cool. Well, I'm gonna close out the broadcast here, and hopefully you stay on. And if not, I'll call you right back. But thank you, gosh, for being on. I really appreciate this, sharing your story, and writing on our website, and doing this interview. And I think it's just awesome to give people hope, because we talk to a lot of people. You've heard our show, where people, you know, doctors and things, and that's all great. But sometimes people like to hear from someone who's actually gone through it and what they did and their experience. I think that's just as powerful to me.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, I hope you enjoyed the interview there with Haley Love. I appreciate it so much, and I appreciate you guys. And we do these interviews for you, and I think there's so much power in listening to people overcome their catastrophic health diseases. And so I appreciate it so much. And like I said it before, the interview, this show is brought to you by the Relax Far Infrared Sauna. So if you're interested in healing at a very, very deep level, this is an amazing machine. Go check it out, extremehealthradio.com/sauna. And if you enjoyed this interview and you like what we're doing, sign up to our newsletter list. That way you never forget to be involved in the live shows that we do every Friday. You can interact with the people that are on the shows as well as other listeners. You can do that by texting the word Get Healthy to 33444. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel below, and you can get access to all of our shows. We're doing a lot more here on YouTube this year, and in general too. A lot more videos, a lot more things going on here on YouTube than we're doing on our website on our show. But on our show, we do have a podcast every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel and check out the links below too in the description for the things that we talked about during the show. So thanks for subscribing and passing this video on to your friends and subscribing to our newsletter list. We really appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys on the next video.